Yes. Did you want to use it or would you tell me? Yes. Okay. Then.
No, worst case, it'll be fine. Should they walk?
No.
Yes, I will need
For the questions, number 4.
And also for now.
Okay. For now, yeah, yes.
Bai? Bueno, arratsaldeon. Hasiko gea. Euskeraz hitz egingo dut, eta horren esan didate, badagola itzulpenik, bai inglesetik, bai euskeratik gaztelera, bosgarrengo zenbakian. En el número 5 tenéis del inglés y del euskera al castellano. Eta inglesetik eta erderatik euskerara 7. ¿Bai? Del castellano y del inglés al euskera el 7. Vale. Esan behar dut hasi baino lehen, mundu bat eta Donostiako udalak antolatutako ekimen bada, edo hitzaldi bada, eta eskertu nahi dugu aukera, hemen Sahar Bardi gurekin egotia. Eta zein da Sahar Bardi? Zerbait berari buruz zenbat datu, esango ditut, 22 urte ditu, bakearen aktivista eta insumisa da, Jerusalenen jaio zen, 2008ko abuztuan soldauzka egiteari uko egin zion, eta rison lezion, ez dakit ondo esan deten, baina rison lezion, bera esango dugu horrela esaten da, edo ez, espetxean 3 aldiz egonda da. Bitxia da, baina badirudi hango insumisoei eta gehien baten eskei galdetzen diete, sartzen direnean espetxean, ea arabiar batekin oheratuko ziren galdetzen dieten beti, behin eta berriro. Saharen anaia ordea, soldadutzan bere gainatu da 2 edo 3. Insumisa delako, hainbat instituzio eta lan ezberdinetan ez diote kontratatzen, ezin du lana egin, eta bekak eta antzekori murriztuta ditu, beste insumiso irraldar bezala. Talde ezberdinetan dago sartuta, Israel eta Palestinanen artean dagoen harresia apurtuaren alde eskatzen duen ekintzetan parte izaten du, gero komentatuko dugu zerbait hortaz, giza eskubideen aldeko elkarteetan, Jerusalenen militarizazioa kuestionatzen duena, herrien adizkidetasunen aldekoa, eta bar, beha kontatuko digu. Hori da, gaur eskatuko dioguna, bere testigantza ematea. Oso gaztetatik, 14 urtekin, ramaletik gertu dagoen bilinen, ostiralero egiten diren protestetan parte hartu izan du. Irakurriko dizuet, zuen baimenakin, oparitu diogun liburua, eta hori kontatzen du, hemendik ere bai, euskaldunak joan izan gera Palestinara, gure beraiekin ados gaudela eta laguntzeko aldugun inean, hemen orain gutxi izan dugu ere Estel barkua eta Gazaruntz jundana, eta baita ere Gazteizti jun ziren, orain 2006an, zanpazarrak. Eta irakurriko izuen momentu batean, beha partu justu galdetu diot lehen, nola ostiraletan joaten da, esaten du, jarraitzen dula, ez beti, ez ostilalero, baina han egiten ditula bere protestak ere, eskatuz harresiak entzea. Eta zanpazarrak ariaino jun zirenean, bueno, nola beti kanpotik etortzen danean jendea eta bueno, soldaduak ez dute hain bortizki errepermitzen ekitaldiak edo ekintzak, baina egun hortan ere bai, bota zituzten pelotazo batzuk, baina hemengo jendea esaten, irakurriko dizuet. Zanpazarrek aurre egin zioten Israelen armadari bilinen. Binen ramalaren ondoan dagoen herri batean, istilu bitxi bat gertatu zen zintzarriz eta albokaren bat edo bestez armaturiko, euskaldun armaturiko kakotxan artean. Euskaldun gutxi batzuek eta bandera palestinarrak eta ikurriak zeramatzen ehunka palestinarrez osatutako talde baten eta Israelgo armadaren artean. Azkenean tiroka hasi zen armada, baina orduko hartan ezen ez hildakorik, ez atxiloturik egon. Horren ordez, egunero erasoak jaso eta nazioarteari berdin zaiola ikusten duen herri baten esker honeko adierazpenak egon ziren. Judimendiko momotxorroak taldeko zanpazar gazteiztarrek leher eginda, ia desdidrataturik, baina oso pozik amaitu zuten saioa. Horrelaxe azaldu zieten protesta modu bitxi honetako protagonistek palestinarrei beren ekintzaren zentzua testu batean. Martxa erritual honekin, gure arbasoek uste zuten lurra esnarazten zutela zintzarrien hotsarekin neguko lozorroaren ondoren eta espiritu gaiztoak usatzen zituztela, zaldi buztana astinduz. Gaurko ekintza honekin, diote beraiena, zanpazarrak menditik jetxi dira mundua esnarazteko eta Palestinan jar ditzan begiak, gurearen moduan eta munduko beste herri askoren moduan desagertzeari uko egiten dion herri honetan. Bueno, anekdotatxo bada, baina justu koinziditu du beha hor 14 urtetik han egiten dula bere protestak eta nahi nizuen ekarri. Honea. Beha kontatuko diogu esperientzia personala eta militarizazioaren inguruan hainbat pasarte edo kontakizun. Zaila hemen bada intsumisoa izatea, pentsazazue han nola izango da. Bakarri bideo batzuk badaude hor Googleen saltzeatu nahi baduzue, asentaturen kontrako ekimen indarkeriazaren moduan egindako batzuk agertzen dira. Konbidatzen zaituet ikustea. Pepe Beunzak, Estatu Espainolean lehenengo objetora izandakoa, lehenengo objetorea, antimilitarista, esaten du insumiso izan behar gerala, sumiso dela esklabu izatea. Ali Abu Gabad, orain 3 urte hemen egon zan gure artean, Donostian, 4 urte espetxean egon da, kolono batek zauritutako, zauri oso larria zituna, anaiak hil zutena, ama ere presa egon zana, esan zigun. Yo puedo decir que quien mató a mi hermano no me pudo arrebatar mi humanidad, ni hacerse con el control de mi mente. Si así hubiese sido, esa hubiese sido la ocupación real. Esaten zuen, horrela, indarkeria erabiltzen ari da Palestina barruan, koordinatuta dago irraldar talde batzukin, eta esperientzia hori eta beste batzuk kontatuko digu gaur Sahar Bardi. Bestea, nahiko hitz egin dut, orain berari emango diot hitza, ordu erdi bat izango du zuei kontatzeko eta gero ondoren galderari edo zuen iritziari aukera emango diogu.
First of all, thank you all for coming. So, as was said before, my name is Sahar. I'm 22 from Jerusalem. Was born and raised there. It's important to say that Jerusalem is a very divided city. You could say that there are 3 cities there, which part of it is the Palestinian side of the city, the Jewish Orthodox part of the city, and the Jewish secular or non-Orthodox part. So most of what I'm talking about now we'll be talking about is very much specific for the Jewish secular part of town where I grew up. And it's important to say that all these exist because they're very segregated. There's a different public transportation system. There's almost a different language between the different parts of the city. There's definitely a different educational system. So what I'm focusing about, or what I know of, my experience, is very much based on the Israeli, the Jewish secular side of the city. I'll use the presentation later, but I'll try to explain a little bit about where I come from and where my peers, how we grow up in Israeli society. I think that there are 2 things that are very fundamental in understanding Israeli society and in understanding conscription in Israel and the continuance of the implementation of the occupation. And these are things that are fundamental in our education. I might start with the question of fear, the element of fear. In general, this has to do not only with Israeli identity, but a lot with Jewish identity as well. In school, in a culture, we're taught from a very young age that we have to be afraid. And we have to be afraid from a lot of different things. Probably the best example of how this is shown is a month between April and May in the Jewish calendar that starts with Jewish Passover and ends with Independence Day. And what happens is that Jewish Passover is when we celebrate the Exodus from Egypt. And there's a song that we all sing. We come together. It's a family meal. It's all very nice. And we sing together a song that would roughly translate into, in every generation, someone tries to exterminate us being the Jewish people. A week later is the Holocaust Memorial Day. Exactly a week later is the Soldiers' Memorial Day. And the following morning is Independence Day. And in many ways, that is the Israeli mindset. Everyone has always tried to kill us. The Holocaust is obviously a very good example of that. And people had to fight and die for you to have a state, and now you have a state. So the next stage from that, of you becoming part of that system, makes perfect sense. The other very strong aspect is the question of militarization. Israel has mandatory military service for both men and women at the age of 18. It's 2 years for women and 3 years for men. But that's not where it stops. That's almost only a technicality. And the military is in our daily life from a very, very young age. I just try to give you a little bit of examples. What does it mean to have the civil society highly militarized? If we could, I can, great. Just one example, this is an airplane, a real one, decommissioned, put in a square in the middle of Beersheba, an Israeli city. The mayor of the city was the commander of the Air Force for a while before he became mayor. So he thought that this is a decorative, it's a nice thing to put in the middle of the city. Maybe even worse, this is a cannon from an Israeli playground. And just the idea of growing up seeing this is your environment. I mean, you walk around, you go to play in a play yard, in a playground, you have weapons around you all the time. Maybe a little bit more about the education specifically, because in many ways that's where things start. In our education system, first of all, there are teachers who teach in schools who are soldiers, like this one behind me. There's a whole corps in the Israeli army that is dedicated for education. And in many ways, it's seen as a very positive thing. Usually, these teachers, soldiers go to very marginalized societies, places that don't have good enough education, that need more teachers. So it's seen as something very positive. But in fact, what it means is that you have a soldier in a classroom, always. Beyond that, every school has a soldier that is responsible for that school that comes to visit mainly the 11th and 12th grade, the last years of high school, to explain to the children about the different possibilities in military service and so on. In the 11th grade, there's a week in which the whole class goes out to a military base for something that resembles basic training. Mainly it's you wear uniforms and you learn how to shoot a gun, and it's supposed to be all very fun and raise your motivation to serve in the army. And this happens all throughout high school. Even before that, maybe a good example in textbooks, just again, the idea that the military is everywhere. It doesn't have to be something that's related to military in order for the military to be apparent there. This is a worksheet that was given out to kindergarten children to learn how to count. So you have the numbers from 1 to 10 on one side, and then you have symbols. Okay, so you have the planes and you have the tanks, and it's all. I mean, that you learn how to count. I mean, it's not necessarily has to do. It could have been flowers, but that kind of choice, the fact that that's always part of the way you grow up. Something that's happened only 2-3 weeks ago, so I'd like to point it out. This direction is very much growing. The Minister of Education today in Israel is probably, dare I say, one of the worst we've ever had. But he's started a new program that gives financial motivation for teachers to get their students into a better place. So part of it is teacher gets more money if more of his students get excellent grades in the final exams. Another part of it is that a teacher will get more money if more of his students go to the army. So teachers are actually being paid to raise the enlistment rates of their classes. Another aspect is the question of, again, in the environment in general, on the street. It's also very clear in advertisement. The reason that I chose this ad specifically, it doesn't have a soldier in it, but it's an ad for a pharmaceutical ad for drugs against hysteria, I'd say, or anxiety. And mainly what you can see, I mean, I can read it. It says, my boy is a combat soldier, the tension, the stress, the phone calls. I asked my pharmacist for Calmervin, whatever the name is, and it helped me relax. I'm back and functioning as I should. And this is one of the reasons that I very much like this advertisement, is because it has a lot of different things in it. I mean, the first thing is the understanding that if you talk to Israeli society about being a mother of a soldier, then people know what that means. I mean, I don't know how much an advertisement like this would work in the Basque today. Probably not as much. People can relate to that. It also puts very clearly where the place of the woman is. It's her boy that's in the army, not her girl, very clearly. He's a combat soldier, and her role is to be the mother at home. That's the role of a woman inside a military society, even though women go to the army. And I'll speak about that more later, but it's important to say that. And the last thing that is also always an issue is that for the mother to be anxious that her son is a combat soldier, that's a bad thing. She needs to take drugs to stop that. Which, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you probably should be worried if your son is out in battle. But as a society, you can't function that way. As a society, you need the mother to stay at home, quietly support her son, and not be anxious about it. Another aspect is economy, and this is always very big. Slower? Okay. It's always a very big issue. Israel is, first of all, it's one of the countries that spends the most money on arms. 15% of our budget, more or less every year, and it changes from year to year, but about 15% of our budget goes to the Ministry of Defense. The Ministry of Defense budget is the only budget in Israel that's not transparent. So when our parliament, the Knesset, vote for it, they have no idea what they're voting for because they don't have the security clearance to read it. So it's written by the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Treasury, and the parliament has to vote for it without being able to read it. So that's one of the charts. The other one is how much Israel spends on military expenses out of the gross domestic product, how much Israel actually manufactures. So again, 6.3 is one of the highest rates in the world. United States, China, India, all these countries that we know that spend a lot of money on military, they're all far behind. Israel is one of the top ones in this. And also the military industry is today the biggest industry in Israel. It's Israel's biggest export. This is just one example of an Israeli company and one of the kibbutzim that manufactures weapons, and it was it got the prize of the exporter of the year in 2010, and what they export is weapons. Gender, as I said before, yes, Israel should have, or the military should be equal. Theoretically, both men and women serve, and there are a lot of battles and so on to manage to get women into combat soldiers, and women can be pilots, and it's seen as a very feminist environment in that level. But when you go into the details, things look a little different. One of the questions that's always a huge issue in the army and not talked about almost at all is the question of sexual harassment in the army. According to a survey of the army, okay, so this is not exactly a very feminist lefty organization. In 2002, they said that 80% of the women were sexually harassed. And this is what the army says. Most surveys say that almost every woman in the army will be sexually harassed during her service. Now, if you take a whole society of teenagers and you put them through that process, then you also get a civil society that's willing to take that. I mean, you take an 18-year-old girl, you put her in the army for 2 years in which the environment is sexist, because militaries, it's the way they work, that's the mechanism that's built. And then when she leaves that, then she sees it as legitimate. It has a huge reaction on civil society, and the same for men. I mean, again, if it was okay to say these things when you were in the army, then why isn't it okay to say it a year later? Just as an example of what sexism in the army can also look like, this was a postcard that was given to young soldiers, male soldiers only, on the day that they were drafted as a gift. The translation, the left part is the outside of the postcard. And what it says is there are a lot of hard things in the army. I don't know how much that word game works in Basque or Spanish, but I think you can understand, yeah? And inside there's a condom, if you didn't understand so far. And just this idea, okay, so this is not someone specifically sexually harassing someone, or it's not rape, but it's an environment that you put youth into. On the same level, again, in advertisement, so soldiers are used a lot in advertisement. This is an advertisement for boxers, for pants. And again, the role of the woman in it is very clear. The role of the man, combat soldier, again, very clear. So all these games of, again, what does it mean for civil society, not only for the army itself? Another huge issue in Israel, we keep saying that the army is the army of the people. And that's how it was created. Back in 1948, the first prime minister of Israel declared the creation of the army, and he says that everyone will go to the army, and it'll be the melting pot of Israeli society, the one place that all Israelis are involved in. And from there to now, things look very differently. I brought a few statistics of what the army actually looks like, how many people actually go to the army, and those are very different numbers than what we're told. I was always told that everyone goes to the army. In practice, today we're talking about around 56% of Israeli society who don't serve in the army at all. About 20% of them are Palestinian citizens of Israel who are automatically exempt from military service. But you also have a pretty big Orthodox group. Jewish Orthodox men are exempt from military service. Religious women are exempt from military service. And 12% of the rest of society, of Jewish secular society, get out of the army on mental health. We're going to assume that they're not all completely crazy. And like most armies in the world, it's the easiest way out. So in practice, you get quite a lot of society that actually doesn't go to the army, but the feeling is still that. You're still told that everyone goes to the army. It's the army of the people. And that brings me to kind of the final point on this. What does it mean for rights and duties? And this is maybe connecting a little bit to what does it mean not to serve in the army. There's I don't know if you've heard, but Israel has also had a social justice movement, a tent movement, a little bit like what happened in Spain about 2.5 years ago. So there's huge protests all around the country demanding social justice, affordable housing, and a few more things. Some of the things that came out of this protest was that will be a huge project of the government of building affordable houses. 50% of these houses will have priority for people who served in the army. So I mean, it goes together. Your rights and your duties to go to the army, they always go together. There's just an advertisement that I took from the internet, very random, advertising a company, a delivery company, something that has absolutely nothing to do with any military knowledge. And the first thing says after military. That's the first demand. And some of this demand is not necessarily, they might not even care if you did or didn't serve in the army. In Israel, if you say after military, what you mean is a certain age. It's the way to make sure that you don't get teenagers. So you say after military and you know you'll get people over 21. But that's the language. And someone who didn't serve in the army can't exactly answer this ad. And the biggest group that's affected by this, although, I mean, yes, theoretically myself included, I didn't serve in the army, and so I should be affected by this, but the biggest group are the Palestinian citizens of Israel. And in many ways, the target audience of this discrimination against people who didn't serve in the army are the Palestinian citizens of Israel. And it's kind of a legal loophole to be able to legally discriminate them without saying that that's what you're doing. And this is a huge issue, especially now, because every year we get a more and more right-wing government in Israel. The next elections in January will probably be even worse than what we have now. And there are politicians, very strong ones, talking about passing laws that you won't be able to be elected into government if you didn't serve in the army. And it's very clear that the target of that is Palestinians. And then taking Palestinians out of the game because they don't share the burden. They don't have the same duties as we do. So it's okay not to give them the same rights. And that's kind of the framework of Israeli society. I'll rewind a little bit and talk about myself and how I kind of got out of it. I think it's important to get that background of understanding where Israelis come from. So if we go again to myself growing up in a Jewish Zionist school, this is everything around me. I don't know how many of you have been to Israel, but those of you who have and walked the streets, you see guns all around you. And you don't even see them. It's transparent for us. That's how you grow up. And then on the other side, you're told that everyone's always trying to kill you. And myself, I grew up in Jerusalem in the Second Intifada, the Second Palestinian Uprising, which meant that there were buses blowing up on the streets, quite literally. And it was part of growing up, part of daily life. So if you're told that everyone's always trying to kill you and you walk in the streets and people are literally trying to kill you, it all fits in. It all comes in place. And I had a very rare opportunity when I was about 12 or 13 to visit a small Palestinian village in East Jerusalem, about 15 minutes from my house. And it was an action day. We were planting olive trees, changing the water pipe of the village, painting on on the school of the neighboring village. And at the time, this was late or early 2003, more or less, and people started talking about the creation of the separation fence. You've probably heard about it. And the idea, what I was told, is that the idea is to build a fence between Palestinians and Jews in order to separate them and to stop the suicide bombings. That's what I was told at home. And we come to this village, and it's a very nice day, and at a certain point, one of the elders of the village points down at the valley and says, this is where they're going to build a fence. And we had no idea what it's going to look like, no idea what that means on people's lives. It was an idea. And I kind of had the opportunity, not a very nice one, with the years to continue visiting the village and seeing what that wall meant, what it meant on people's lives. So the olive trees that we planted were uprooted, and the water pipe that we changed was dangling over the fence for about 4 or 5 years. And the fence was between this village and the neighboring village. So the school that we painted its walls, now the kids from this village still to this day have to go through a checkpoint every day in order to get to school. Now, the fence didn't affect my life that way. I didn't see it in my ordinary life. It had no effect. But for this village, and not only, it kind of completely changed their lives. It changed everything. So when I started being more and more active out of seeing this kind of huge difference in our lives. And at the age of 14, as was said before, I found myself going to demonstrations against the wall in Bil'in. I'll try to explain a little how they work. Specifically, I even remember the demonstration where the delegation from the bus came. Everyone remembers it because of the bells and the colors. It's very nice. But mainly what these demonstrations look like is we arrive to the village, walk down towards the route of the fence where they were starting to build it. And before we'd even get close, you'd have soldiers shooting tear gas, rubber bullets, and then some of the Palestinian youth would throw rocks back, and then it would go like that for a while, and that's more or less what a demonstration looked like. And for me, this was a very strange situation, because I was still, although I was critical and understood that occupation, something's wrong about it, but still, for me, soldiers were supposed to protect me. That's their job. That's what they are. And you come to a demonstration, and you have soldiers shooting at you, and you have Palestinians offering you shelter and trying to protect you. And it kind of shifts that whole question of who's us and who is them, and everything that you've been told about who your enemy is and who's there to protect you. And it doesn't change it. It's not a 180. It's not that I can see soldiers as my enemy now, because, as was said here before, my brother's in the army, all my friends did their, it kind of shatters the black and white world entirely. And out of that, by the time I was 18 and supposed to join the army, it was very clear for me that I can't join the army. I couldn't one day stand in a demonstration like that and get shot by soldiers, and the next day be the soldier shooting, or be the soldier collecting the intelligence for the shooting. As far as I'm concerned, it's still part of the same system. So together with a group of friends, we decided to refuse. Now it's important to say, as I said, 12% of Israeli society get out of the army on mental health. It's a pretty easy way to choose. And so our choice to go to prison was a choice. We wanted to say why we're refusing, to make a public stand out of it, and in a way to use the fact that we will be imprisoned as a stage to speak to Israeli society and say, there are young Israelis who would rather sit in prison than be a part of this system. And it's important for us, for us that Israeli society knows this. And so, again, as a group, we refused. We spent about a few months each in prison. I spent about 2 months in military prison, another 3 months in detention. And finally, I was released. And now I know that the framing of this talk was a lot about the price of refusal. Legally, the price is very small. There are a few problems with studying, with getting a medical license, because if you got out of the army on mental health, which all refusers also do, I got out of the army on mental health after my prison term, so I'm officially crazy. So you might have problems getting a medical license. You won't be able to work in security jobs, which is not very much an issue with us. But legally, again, except for a lot of bills that are trying to be built, there aren't many consequences. Most of the consequences are social. Because if you come to any job, it doesn't matter what it is, and you hand in your resume and it doesn't have military service in it, then someone's going to ask you, what did you do in the army? Why isn't it here? And when you say that you didn't, then they're not officially going to not take you for a job because of that. But in practice, I mean, think about yourself. If you gave 3 years of your life for something that you believed in, and your whole society does that, and then someone comes up to you and says, no, I didn't do that. The social reaction is very clear, that we're seen as parasites in a lot of ways. Again, you want to get all your rights, but you don't do your duties. That's not how a democratic society should work. You're supposed to do your part as well. So it's much more a social issue than what it is a legal one. And so it's also much harder to measure, I guess, on that level. I think I might stop at this point because I would much rather to get questions and kind of see where you want to take it, if that's okay by you, because I can talk forever, but rather not. Yeah, cool.
Mila esker, Sahar. Orduan orain zuen aukera da. Nahi baduzute, altxa eskuak eta nahi emango dizuet hitza. Bai zuen iritzia edo baita galdetu zerbait. Bai. Usten dut mikrofono batekin zabiltzatela hortik, ezta? Antxe?
A ver, Sahar, welcome. Yo quisiera hacerte una pregunta que va relacionada también precisamente con los palestinos, no solamente de la zona al muro de Bilín, a la que tú acudes todos los viernes, sino que no nos has hablado un poco del mismo Jerusalén, donde hay una zona considerada como que van a construir ahí un jardín que se llama la ciudad de David, y un poquito más abajo hay una comunidad de palestinos amenazados con destruirse sus casas y desplazarlos, pues vete a saber a dónde, ¿no? Que se llama Siluán o Silván. Entonces me gustaría saber qué actividad tenéis vosotros con respecto a esta zona determinada y amenazada por el Estado de Israel.
Well, the particular area is called Silwan, or specifically the Bustan. It's 92 houses that are with a threat of demolitions for this creation of a park. Specifically, every neighborhood in East Jerusalem has its own story. And East Jerusalem is probably the best example of a very systematic attempt to clean what they call, to clean East Jerusalem of its Palestinians. And it's important to specify it. There are a huge variety of kinds of settlements in East Jerusalem that don't exist in anywhere else. There are settlements in the middle of Palestinian neighborhoods. There are settlements that are complete neighborhoods. There are police stations and border police stations that are also stationed inside Palestinian neighborhoods. It's a huge mechanism of control. And the main purpose of it, and this is very clear, the settler movement says it very clearly, specifically in the neighborhood that you're talking about. There's a settlement movement that says that their purpose is to Judaize East Jerusalem. That's what they say. It's out there. And on that level, Jerusalem is always a key point, because in any solution, political solution, when people talk about two states, it's very clear that East Jerusalem will have to be the capital of a Palestinian state. There will never be a two-state solution without East Jerusalem as its capital. And the settler movement understands this and are trying to make it impossible as they possibly can. And there's a ring of settlements surrounding the old city from the east to make sure that the old city will stay always in Israeli control, which means again, no two-state solutions, because no Palestinian politician will ever agree to a state without access to Al-Aqsa Mosque. I mean, that's very clear. So that's as far as where the settler movement is taking these kind of actions. As far as the protest against it, first of all, I mean, it's a Palestinian protest, or Palestinian-led. And it's very clear for us as activists that we come in solidarity. And wherever we're needed, and that neighborhood has organized a lot of demonstrations in which they've asked us to come, but they've also organized a lot of demonstrations where they'd rather we not come, and it's very clear that that has to remain Palestinian-led because it's their community, and they also suffer the consequences when they come, and the consequences do come on that level. The other aspect of it, beyond protest in the area itself, is advocacy on a wider level. So I can tell you that as I worked with the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, so we were working with the American embassies, with most European embassies, trying to prevent the demolitions that way, also working with lawyers, trying to, through the Israeli court system, which is, I mean, it's a racist court system in basis, but still trying to postpone and stop the demolitions as much as possible. So that's kind of the different angles that we can try and take.
Hola, bueno, yo tengo dos preguntas muy amplias, porque la respuesta puede ser muy larga. Por un lado, tu visión de los últimos acontecimientos en Gaza, la guerra relacionada con las elecciones de enero, etcétera, la entrada como miembro observador de Palestina en la ONU, etcétera. Eso por una parte. Y luego, por otra parte, yo nunca he estado en Israel, pero una cosa que me llama enormemente la atención es cómo es esa sociedad en la que hay gente de procedencias tan diversas, gente de Etiopía, gente procedente de Europa del Este, gente de Rusia, que vienen probablemente muchas veces sin saber la lengua. O sea, realmente, ¿cómo es la convivencia? O sea, hay problemas supongo que de clasismo, de racismo, tiene que haber de todo, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, esos son un poco los dos temas que me gustaría que hablaras. Gracias.
Okay, so about the recent events, honestly, it's very hard to say, first of all, what I think about them in general, but also what the consequences of them will be. I mean, specifically, I think the most interesting thing that happened in the last attack on Gaza is actually the role of Egypt. And I think that that's the most interesting thing to see where that will go. The fact that traditionally Egypt and Turkey were the countries that Israel used as kind of middlemen for all these processes. And this is the first time that Egypt, not under Mubarak, a very different Egypt with a Muslim Brotherhood, is playing that role, but from a different place. I mean, it's not Mubarak anymore. So I think that's a very interesting change. Although with all the problems of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt itself, which we've seen very well in the last 2 weeks. But that's in general. About the UN bid, I mean, I think it's important to say that it doesn't have many practical implementations right now. Unless the Palestinian Authority goes to the International Criminal Court and tries to start that process as well, which it's not at all sure that they will. There's a lot of European pressure against it. It will have no practical importance. It is a huge symbolic step. And it's not by coincidence that it was November 29th, which is also the day that the UN decided on the partition plan back in '47. It's a huge issue symbolically, and it might have some kind of an effect, mostly because of the very little countries that were against it. And that Germany and countries that have always been on the side of Israel, whatever they say, are finally taking a critical stance. That's the most important thing that, in my eyes, that actually happened there. About living in Israeli society and its huge variety, I would like to say that it's not as much as a variety as is seen, because it is very divided geographically, it's very divided economically. I can tell you that growing up in my, I'm Ashkenazi, I'm a Jew from European origin. Growing up in that kind of environment, middle class, that's the kind of people that you see. Yeah, we had an Ethiopian girl in our class. But, I mean, it's not, you don't see that kind of melting pot that Israel very much likes to show itself. On that level, I would like again to give an example from the army, because the army is always a very good example of Israeli society. The army was said to be the melting pot of Israeli society. The idea was, what I was told, that all Israelis go into it, and then you meet other people, and you meet new people that you wouldn't meet otherwise because they weren't in your neighborhood and so on. While in practice, I mean, yes, again, it happens here and there, but in general, if you look at the different positions, if you look at pilots, they're usually going to be middle class or higher, white, Ashkenazi origin, mostly men, very much mostly men. It's very clear what that group is. If you go to the border police, which is the unit that goes to checkpoints and does a lot of the policing, it's considered one of the worst units, then you'll see the Ethiopians, the Russians, the Mizrahi Jews from Arab countries. It's very clear that segregation continues in the army. I can tell you that military prisons there's like an Ethiopian group, a Russian group. I mean, it's very, very clear that segregation inside society as well. Again, it's obviously not something particular to Israel, but to say that it's one nice, big, happy group, very far from it. That said, I mean, there has been accomplishments, at least as far as how the government sees accomplishments, and the literacy rate is very high. Most people do speak Hebrew, and there is kind of that into it. And there is an attempt to create one culture, but in many cases it very much erases the rest of the cultures that come into it. And that was something that was especially very strong in the 50s and 60s. It was very clear that there's an attempt to erase the other cultures who come in and create a new Israeli culture. And if you're not there, if you don't stand on that standard, then that's a problem.
Hola, gracias por tu charla, que me ha gustado mucho. Y me ha gustado mucho también el planteamiento que hacías, que al final es un debate social, ¿no? El problema de la militarización. Y me entraba la duda de, o sea, realmente me supongo que haréis un intento de generar ese debate a nivel social, de cuestionar la propia institución militar. No sé si realmente, me supongo que será una cosa complicada, la gente se atreve a cuestionar el propio ejército, o es una institución que no se puede tocar, ¿no? Eso por un lado. Y por el otro, que me ha encantado también que hicieras una visión feminista, ¿no? del ejército y de la militarización, si no, no se puede entender, ¿no? Y de alguna manera cómo el ejército también funciona como una forma de socialización en el machismo, ¿no? Para los chavales y chavalas también que entran ahí, ¿no? Me supongo que será súper difícil también el poder visibilizar toda esa violencia machista de la que hablabas, de todos esos abusos, ese acoso. ¿Hay realmente una respuesta de las tías a esa violencia?
I'll try to connect the two questions. I stole this presentation from New Profile, which is an organization I'm also active in. And it's just one example of an organization that is trying to challenge the militarization. And what it means is we have youth groups allowing youth to have a space to actually talk about this, to have a place where you can ask yourself, do I want to serve in the army? No one ever asks you that. Sometimes we manage to get into Israeli groups, youth movements, or pre-military academies or schools. And the first question that I asked everyone go around, introduce themselves, and say if they are or are not going to the army and why. And every time, the rare people who say no, I'm not going to the army, know exactly why. They can give you a 2-hour speech on why. The people who say yes, they don't have much of a reason. I mean, that's the default. They've never asked themselves, why am I going to the army? So the idea is very much to give a space for that question to be asked. There's a summer camp that does that. There are youth groups. Another pretty big part of the work is to help people out of the army. And if it's people before military service, if it's people during their service who want to get out, because quite a lot of people do that, and if it's people after who do reserve service. Israel also has a reserve service system, which means that mostly men, but not only, are also called up for mandatory service throughout the years. Sometimes it's a month per year. And so we have all these people who want to get out of the army and help them on a personal level. If they want to go out publicly and go to prison, then help them through that. But if they want to get out through mental health, which is much easier, then also through that system. And we managed to get about 2,000 people a year that we help them out of that system. Maybe connecting that to how do you talk about the effects of sexism. I think that's one of the very interesting things that I found. Again, when you speak to normal Israeli groups, to Israeli youth, it's very hard to engage when you start talking about the army. You're, again, automatically seen as a traitor. It's very hard to start that conversation. What I have found that specifically talking about the role of women gives people a different perspective. They've never thought about it. They've never thought about what does it mean that there's such a high sexual harassment rate. And when you start talking about that, then it suddenly opens people's minds to say, okay, maybe there is something about the system that I didn't quite realize. When you tell Israeli youth, for instance, that there's a very clear thing in Israel that ex-generals, because generals can retire at the age of 45 and get pension. So 45, you obviously still can work, and a lot of them they go to be CEOs of private companies directly. They go to be principals of schools, because if you can run a unit, you can run a school. It's more or less the same. And they go to be politicians. Out of our ministers of defense, there was one since '67 that wasn't an ex-general in the army. It's very clear that connection. High-ranking officers are usually men, or 99% men. That also means that all these positions are filled out by men. I mean, that connection between civil society and the army, when you put it in gender terms, that suddenly does talk mostly to women in a perspective that they didn't think about before. So I mean, I do think that it's an opening because it's just not talked about.
Sí. Hace unos 8 o 10 años, no me acuerdo muy bien, estuvimos un grupo de unas 50 personas de Donosti, primero en Israel, en Jerusalén, con una guía que nos explicó y nos puso muy mal a los palestinos. A continuación pasamos a Jordania. Allí un guía palestino que nos enseñó parte de Jordania nos puso muy mal a los israelitas. Entonces, la conclusión nuestra fue que esto no tiene solución en la vida, que hay un odio mutuo y no tiene solución nunca. Entonces, la pregunta va, el grupo en el que tú estás, ¿cómo ve la solución de esto? Quitando la obligación de ir al ejército, quitando el ejército, quitando la mitad del ejército, o el grupo vuestro no tiene nada que ver con lo que yo he hablado.
I don't think that there is mutual hate. I think that it's much more mutual fear. I mean, when you talk to people about where that hate comes from, they're terrified, which sometimes seems slightly absurd with Israel and the size of its army, but still, people really are scared. And on that level, I think that's where you can try to change it. When you try to break down things from the age of young kids, if they don't see tanks on the streets, then yes, they will be less afraid, and that is an opening. But that's kind of in very general terms. As in more practical terms, I think that, yes, conscription, as far as I'm concerned, is a huge issue inside the mechanism of occupation and the conflict in general. One of the things that it does very, very clearly is that conscription forces the civil society to defend the occupation. Because you have, if my brother, if your brother, if yourself, if your mother, if everyone in your family, your friends, your society are or were in the army, then you can't criticize the army. I mean, you say that what they're doing is immoral, then you're saying what you are doing is immoral. I mean, it's very, very personal. And there's a whole psychological mechanism that says that you can't criticize the army. The best example of this that I've seen was with my brother, because he's a lefty. He has very similar opinions to mine in a lot of things. And it was very clear for me to see how every time he was involved in some way in a specific military operation, even if he was against the system and against the occupation and all these things, specifically what he was personally involved in, he would automatically defend it. And he would say, yes, all the rest is wrong. But this was okay because, and a list of reasons. On a psychological level, you have to defend it. And on that level, I think that conscription is a huge issue in maintaining occupation. So yes, one of the phases has to be the end of conscription. I have to be honest that I don't see conscription ending without the end of occupation, and the other way around. It's kind of a circle that I'm not sure how to get out of, but it's trying to open up people's minds. We had a campaign just a month or two ago under the logo of ending conscription, and it was just a Facebook campaign that in less than a week got over 180,000 people saw it, which is huge numbers in Israel. I mean, talking about a population of 7 million. And just the fact that, sure, not everyone were supportive, but just the fact that you start talking about these things, people do react. They have some kind of reaction. And that's where we're trying to build it. And then it's time. I mean, all these things, so many conflicts that we can think about that when, we're in the middle of them, you thought there's no way that it's going to be solved. The amount of hatred, take Northern Ireland, I mean, the amount of hatred that was built in there, yes, it takes a very long time, and yes, there still is tension, but with time, things do heal. And when the next generation does not grow into that, when the next generation doesn't grow into suicide bombings on my sides or checkpoints and bombings of Gaza and so on the other side, then yes, they might not seem as militaristic, and there might be a direction. It's very vague, I know, but that's the best I can do.
Vuelvo a hacer otra pregunta. En este caso, tengo un amigo en Jerusalén que lleva 22 años en una cárcel, no en la cárcel en sí, sino en Jerusalén, prisionero, que no puede hablar con los periodistas, que no puede hablar con los amigos casi, ni siquiera con los amigos del exterior, vamos a decir, de fuera de Palestina. Porque estamos preguntando aquí, y Jerusalén no es Israel, en mi caso, no lo reconozco como